The dying ship tumbled through space like a broken bird, its hull scarred by weapons fire and meteoric impacts. Inside, Captain Sarah Chen watched the readouts with growing concern as her patrol vessel, the UNSC Harmony, approached the derelict craft. The vessel's design was unlike anything in Earth's databases. Organic curves merged with crystalline structures, creating something that seemed grown rather than built. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," reported Communications Officer Martinez, her voice tight with concentration. "It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the universal translator is picking up fragments. They're requesting asylum." Sarah's jaw tightened. Asylum was a loaded word these days. For the past 6 months, Earth had been receiving increasingly desperate transmissions from the outer rim of their solar system, ships of unknown origin, carrying beings that human science could barely comprehend, all telling similar stories of exile and persecution by something called the Galactic Consortium. The United Nations Space Command had been divided on how to respond. Half the Admiralty wanted to turn the refugees away, fearing that harboring them might draw unwanted attention from this mysterious galactic power. The other half, led by Admiral Harrison, argued that humanity had a moral obligation to help those in need. Sarah found herself firmly in the latter camp. "Status of the vessel?" she asked, studying the damaged ship on her view screen. It was perhaps half the size of the Harmony, but something about its construction suggested it had once been beautiful. Hull breaches in multiple sections, life support failing, reported Tactical Officer Rodriguez. "I'm reading approximately 30 life signs aboard, but they're fading fast. Whatever species they are, they're not going to last much longer in that environment." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Dock with them. Emergency protocols. Get medical and engineering teams ready for immediate deployment." "Captain," Martinez said carefully, "Admiral Reeves' standing orders are to report any contact with extraterrestrial vessels before taking action." "Admiral Reeves isn't watching 30 people die in front of him," Sarah replied sharply. "We can report after we've saved them. Rodriguez, scan for weapons or hostile technology." The tactical officer's fingers flew over his console. "No active weapons systems detected. In fact, Captain, I'm not reading any weapons at all. This ship appears to be completely civilian." The docking procedure took 18 precious minutes, time that Sarah knew they couldn't afford. When the airlocks finally sealed and her teams prepared to board, she found herself holding her breath. This would be humanity's first direct contact with intelligent alien life, and it was happening in a cramped medical bay rather than in some grand diplomatic ceremony. The alien ship's airlock hissed open, revealing an atmosphere thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burned electronics. Chief Medical Officer Dr. B. Emily Watson stepped through first, followed by her team and several Marines. Sarah watched through the helmet cameras as they moved deeper into the vessel. The interior was even more organic than the exterior suggested. Walls curved and flowed like living tissue, while bioluminescent panels provided dim, flickering light. But it was the beings they found that truly shocked the human team into silence. They were tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between deep blue and silver, depending on the light. Their faces were almost human-like, but possessed large, multifaceted eyes that reflected the emergency lighting like broken mirrors. Most were unconscious, their bodies curled in what appeared to be protective positions around the smaller members of their group. "My God," Dr. Robin Watson whispered, her voice carrying through the comm system. "They're protecting their children." One of the aliens stirred as the medical team approached. Its eyes opened, revealing an intelligence that was unmistakably afraid, but also hopeful. It spoke in a language of musical tones and harmonic vibrations that the universal translator struggled to process. "Please." The translation finally came through, static-filled but comprehensible. "Children. Save the children first." Dr. Watson knelt beside the alien, her medical scanner already working. "We're going to help all of you," she said softly. "Can you tell me your name?" The being's throat worked to produce human-compatible sounds. "Zarath. Was, navigator of the vessel Song of Memories. We are Lumari." The alien's eyes grew dimmer. "We were cast out. The consortium declared us dangerous." "Dangerous?" Sarah found herself asking through the comm. "What did you do?" Zarath's head tilted in what might have been confusion. We sang. We sang the old songs, the ones that remember the galaxy as it was before the purification." The consortium said memory was rebellion. A sound like broken glass came from the alien's throat, possibly laughter. Perhaps they were right. Over the next hour, the human medical teams worked frantically to stabilize their unexpected guests. The Lumari physiology was unlike anything they had encountered, but Dr. Watson's team proved remarkably adaptable. They discovered that the aliens could breathe Earth's atmosphere with minimal assistance, and their biochemistry, while exotic, responded well to basic medical support. As the last of the Lumari children was brought aboard the Harmony, Sarah found herself face-to-face with Zara in the medical bay. The alien navigator had insisted on being the last to leave their ship despite obvious injuries. "Your vessel," Zarath said, their translated voice now clearer as the universal translator learned their language patterns. "It lacks the quantum resonance chambers of consortium ships." "How do you travel between stars?" Sarah blinked in surprise. "We don't. This is a system patrol vessel. We've only just begun to explore our own solar system." Zarath's large eyes widened further. "You are bound to one star? One world?" The alien's expression shifted to something that might have been wonder. "Yet you risk yourselves for strangers from the void. How curious." "It's what we do," Sarah said simply. "Humanity has a saying. No one gets left behind. It doesn't matter where you're from." The navigator was quiet for a long moment, then spoke in their own language. A hauntingly beautiful series of tones that needed no translation. Dr. Watson later described it as the most beautiful sound she had ever heard, like crystalline bells mixed with a mother's lullaby. "What did they say?" Sarah asked. Dr. Watson wiped tears from her eyes. The translator caught fragments, something about the song of hope returning to a silent galaxy, and children of Earth who sing harmony with strangers. 3 hours later, as the Harmony made its way back toward Earth's orbital stations, Sarah stood in the observation deck with Zarath. The alien had recovered enough to walk, though they still moved carefully. "Tell me about the consortium," Sarah said quietly. "What are we dealing with?" Zarath's skin shifted to darker blue tones. "An alliance of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. They have ruled for millennia, bringing what they call order and progress. But their order demands conformity. Their progress requires the elimination of those they deem incompatible with their vision. How many species have they exiled? In the past century? Perhaps 100 worlds, a dozen species. Some fought back and were destroyed. Others, like us, simply fled." Zareth turned to look at Sarah. "Your species is young, Captain Chen. You have perhaps a few hundred more years before the consortium notices you. When they do, you will face the same choice. Join them and abandon your uniqueness, or be cast out as we were." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "And if we refuse both options? Then you will understand why we call what happened to us the Great Purification. The consortium does not tolerate defiance from primitive species." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command. Admiral Harrison wants to speak with you immediately." As Sarah made her way to the communications station, she found Admiral Harrison's weathered face filling the screen. Behind him, she could see the bustle of Earth's primary orbital command center. "Captain Chen," the Admiral said without preamble, "I understand you've made contact with alien refugees." "Yes, sir. 37 individuals of a species called the Lumari. They're requesting asylum from something called the Galactic Consortium." Admiral Harrison's expression grew grave. "Captain, this is the 14th such group we've encountered in the past month. They're not isolated incidents. We're looking at a galaxy-wide refugee crisis, and Earth appears to be the only destination they consider safe." Sarah felt her heart sink. "Sir, what are our orders?" "Prepare for immediate debriefing upon your return." "And Captain?" The Admiral's voice softened slightly. "Good work. Whatever's happening out there, these beings need our help. It's time humanity took a stand." As the transmission ended, Sarah returned to the observation deck where Zarath still stood, now joined by several other Lamari who had recovered enough to walk. They were looking out at the distant blue marble of Earth with expressions of wonder and hope. "Your world," one of them said. "A younger Lumari whose name translated as Melody of Dawn Winds. It sings even from this distance. How is that possible?" Sarah looked out at her homeworld, trying to see it through alien eyes. "I'm not sure I understand. The life song," Zarath explained. "Every world with abundant life creates a harmonic resonance that can be felt through subspace. But your world's song is different. It harmonizes with itself in ways we have never heard. Your species, your cultures, your very diversity creates music in the quantum realm. Is that why you came here? Sarah asked. Because of our world song? No, Zareth said quietly. We came because we had nowhere else to go. But now that we have heard your world song and witnessed your kindness to strangers, we understand something important. The alien skin shifted to warm, golden tones. The galaxy has been silent for so long that we forgot what hope sounded like. As the Harmony approached Earth's orbital facilities, Sarah found herself thinking about the implications of what she had learned. Humanity was about to become involved in a galactic conflict, whether they wanted to or not. The refugees aboard her ship were proof that somewhere out there, a vast civilization was systematically eliminating anyone who didn't fit their vision of order. But looking at the Lumari, seeing the gratitude and hope in their alien features, Sarah felt something stirring in her chest. It was the same feeling she'd had as a child, listening to her grandmother's stories about the Underground Railroad and ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply because it was right. Humanity had always been at its best when standing up for the underdog. Now, it seemed the entire galaxy had underdogs that needed someone to stand up for them. As Earth grew larger in the viewscreen, Sarah made a silent promise to herself and to the aliens under her protection. Whatever came next, humanity would not turn its back on those who needed help. The galaxy might have cast them out, but humans would take them in. And if that meant standing against an ancient galactic empire, so be it. After all, it wouldn't be the first time humanity had faced impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. 6 weeks after the arrival of the Lumari refugees, Earth's primary orbital station resembled a bustling intergalactic haven more than a military installation. What had started as a small refugee crisis had exploded into something unprecedented in human history. The station's docking bays, originally designed for human vessels, had been hastily modified to accommodate the wildly different ship designs of a dozen alien species. Dr. Marcus Webb, xenobiologist and newly appointed Director of Refugee Affairs, stood in the observation lounge watching the latest arrivals. A massive crystalline vessel, clearly damaged but still magnificent, was being guided toward Docking Bay 7 by human tugboats. The ship belonged to the Kirathi, a silicon-based species whose homeworld had been strip-mined by consortium forces after they refused to surrender their quantum computing technology. 17 species now, said Dr. Amelia Santos, his deputy, as she joined him at the observation window. The integration teams are stretched beyond their limits. Housing, food synthesis, medical care, we're making it up as we go along. Marcus nodded grimly. Any word from the Security Council meeting? Still deadlocked. The isolationist bloc wants to turn away new arrivals, claiming we're inviting disaster. The humanitarian bloc insists we have a moral obligation to help. And the military wants to start building defenses. What about Admiral Harrison's proposal? Amelia's expression brightened slightly. That's actually gaining traction. The idea of creating a formal refugee coalition with Earth as the coordinating hub is appealing to more and more delegates.
Especially after yesterday's testimony from the Nixari.
The Nixari testimony had been a turning point in the debates. The insectoid species had arrived 3 days earlier, their spherical ships blackened by weapons fire. Their leader, a being called Prime Thinker Zeketh, had addressed the United Nations Emergency Assembly in perfect English, learned, they claimed, by analyzing human communication patterns during their week-long journey to Earth. What Zeketh had revealed sent shockwaves through human leadership. The consortium wasn't just exiling troublesome species, they were actively hunting them. Refugee ships were being tracked across the galaxy, their hiding places bombed from orbit, their survivors captured and sent to re-education facilities that no one ever returned from. The consortium has been expanding their purification protocols, Zeketh had explained to the stunned assembly. What began as exile has become active extermination. We are no longer unwanted refugees. We are prey in a galaxy-wide hunt. The revelation had galvanized Earth's response. Within hours of the testimony, Admiral Harrison had announced the formation of the Terran Refugee Defense Initiative. Every human naval vessel not currently engaged in essential operations was being reassigned to patrol the outer system, watching for both refugee ships and potential consortium pursuit. Marcus's reverie was broken by his communicator chiming. Director Webb, please report to Conference Room Alpha. Priority 1. When Marcus arrived at the conference room, he found an unusual gathering waiting for him. Admiral Harrison sat at the head of the table, flanked by representatives from several refugee species. Zareth was there, now serving as an unofficial ambassador for the Lumari. Beside them sat Kirathi clan Mother Veltar, her crystalline form refracting the room's lights into rainbow patterns, and Prime Thinker Zakth, their compound eyes reflecting a dozen different versions of Marcus as he entered. Director Webb, Admiral Harrison began. Our refugee representatives have brought us a proposal, one that could change everything. Zareth spoke first, their voice now perfectly clear as Earth's computers had fully adapted to Lumari speech patterns. Director, we have been passive recipients of your kindness for too long. Our species wish to contribute to our own defense, and to the defense of other refugees who will come. What kind of contribution? Marcus asked, taking his seat. Clan Mother Veltar answered, her voice like crystal chimes. Each of our species possesses technologies that the consortium covets but fears to allow us to keep. We propose sharing these technologies with humanity, creating a defensive capability that could protect not just Earth, but establish sanctuary worlds throughout this region of space. Prime Thinker Zekth's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smile. The Lumari possess quantum harmonic technology that can detect consortium ships days before they arrive. The Kirathi can grow living crystal matrices that make traditional shields obsolete. My people, the Nexari, have developed biotechnology that can adapt and evolve faster than any conventional military system. And that's just the beginning, added a new voice. Marcus turned to see a being he hadn't met before, tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to contain swirling galaxies. I am Wind Through Stars of the Etherian Collective. We arrived this morning with knowledge of the consortium's greatest weakness. Admiral Harrison leaned forward. Which is? Their reliance on conformity, Wind Through Stars replied. For 3,000 years, the consortium has conquered by forcing diverse species into rigid hierarchical structures. Their fleets, their tactics, their very way of thinking has become predictable, because they have eliminated variation from their society.
You're suggesting they can't adapt to unexpected strategies?
Marcus asked. More than that, Zareth interjected. We are suggesting that Earth's greatest strength, your diversity, your tendency to find multiple solutions to the same problem, is precisely what the galaxy needs to resist the consortium. Clan Mother Veltar began to glow more brightly, a sign of excitement among her people. In 3,000 years of conquest, the consortium has never faced a species like humanity. You lack their advanced technology, but you possess something they eliminated from themselves long ago, true innovation born from chaotic thinking. Admiral Harrison was quiet for a long moment, studying the assembled aliens. What exactly are you proposing? A formal alliance, Prime Thinker Zek stated. Not just sanctuary, but active resistance. We share our technologies, you provide the innovative thinking and manufacturing capability. Together, we build something the galaxy has never seen, a coalition based on cooperation rather than conquest. The risks are enormous, Admiral Harrison said slowly. If we take this step, we're essentially declaring war on the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. With respect, Admiral, Wind Through Stars said softly. That war is already inevitable. The consortium will not allow humanity to continue harboring their exiles indefinitely. The only question is whether you face them as victims or as allies of those who know their weaknesses. Marcus found himself thinking about the children he had seen in the refugee quarters, young Lumari who sang lullabies that could soothe crying human babies. Kirathi younglings who had grown crystal gardens to share with Earth's botanists. Nexari larvae who played games with human children despite having no common language. The integration hadn't been without problems, but the potential for cooperation was undeniable. What would this alliance look like in practical terms? Marcus asked. Zareth activated a holographic projector that materialized in the center of the table. The display showed a three-dimensional map of local space, with Earth at the center and various star systems marked in different colors. We have identified 17 systems within 100 light-years of Earth that could support refugee populations, Zareth explained. With combined technology, we could establish defended colonies on these worlds. Each colony would specialize in different aspects of our resistance: research, manufacturing, agriculture, defensive positions. The Kirathi could grow entire fleets, Clan Mother Veltar added. Ships that heal themselves, weapons that adapt to enemy defenses, armor that becomes stronger the more it is damaged. The Nexari biotechnology could create living computers that think as fast as your artificial intelligences, but with true intuition. Prime Thinker Zikth continued. And the Lumari harmonic systems could provide communication networks that span galaxies without delay. And the Etherian knowledge of quantum mechanics could make your ships untraceable to consortium sensors. Wind Through Stars concluded.
We could move entire fleets without detection. Admiral Harrison studied the holographic display.
How long would it take to establish these colonies? With human manufacturing efficiency, perhaps 2 years for the first 3 colonies, 5 years for a complete network, Zarath estimated. But Admiral, we must begin soon. Our intelligence suggests the consortium has noticed the refugee traffic to this system. They are mobilizing a response. What kind of response? Marcus asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. A purification fleet, Wind Through Stars said quietly. 200 ships, including Fortress-class vessels. They will arrive in approximately 18 months, expecting to find a primitive human civilization harboring a few scattered refugees. Instead, they will find the first multi-species alliance in 3 millennia. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus looked around the table at the faces, human and alien, and saw the same determination in all of them. These beings had lost their homes, their worlds, their entire civilizations, but they hadn't lost hope, and they hadn't lost the will to fight back. I need to present this to the Security Council, Admiral Harrison said finally, but I want you all to know. Personally, I think it's the only chance we have. Separately, we're all doomed. Together, we might just surprise them. 3 days later, the United Nations passed Resolution 2157 by a vote of 187 to 8, with 5 abstentions. The resolution formally established the Terror Refugee Defense Coalition and authorized the sharing of technology for mutual defense. More importantly, it committed Earth to establishing and defending refugee colonies throughout the local region of space. Marcus stood once again in the observation lounge. But this time, he wasn't watching ships arrive. He was watching them leave. The first colonial expedition was departing for Kepler 442b, a world that had been identified as suitable for joint human-Lumari habitation. The expedition included 50 human families, 20 Lumari clans, and enough Kyrathi biocrystals to begin growing a defensive fleet. Dr. Santos joined him, carrying a tablet filled with colonial reports. The Kyrathi have already begun crystal forming the colony ship's hull. Captain Rodriguez says it's like watching the ship come alive, and the Lumari harmonic cores have reduced the journey time from 8 months to 6 weeks. Any word from the outer system monitors? Marcus asked. Still quiet, but the Nexari scouts have detected quantum wake signatures at the edge of sensor range. Something big is moving out there, but it's too far away to identify. Marcus nodded, trying not to let his concern show. The alliance was proceeding faster than anyone had hoped, but so was the consortium response. Intelligence gathered from various refugee groups suggested that Earth's activities had triggered something called a priority purification protocol, reserved for species that the consortium considered existential threats to their order. Director, Dr. Santos said quietly, "Do you really think we can pull this off? Fighting an empire that's conquered the entire galaxy?" Marcus watched as another ship departed the station, this one carrying Etherian quantum specialists and human engineers to establish a research facility in the Tau Ceti system. Despite everything, he found himself smiling. 6 months ago, if you had told me I'd be watching humans and aliens working together to build an interstellar resistance movement, I would have recommended psychiatric evaluation, he said. But here we are, and it's working. Not perfectly, not without problems, but it's working. The consortium has spent 3,000 years building an empire based on the idea that different species can't truly cooperate without one dominating the others, Marcus continued. They're about to discover that they're wrong, and more importantly, they're about to face an enemy that doesn't think the way they expect enemies to think. As if summoned by his words, Zarath appeared beside them, moving with the fluid grace characteristic of their species. Director Wed, Dr. Santos. I bring news from the Lumari Council of Voices. Good news, I hope? Marcus asked. Zarath's skin shifted to warm golden tones, a sign of excitement. The council has composed what you might call an anthem for our alliance. They wish to perform it at tomorrow's colony ship launch ceremony. That sounds wonderful, Dr. Santos said. What will they sing about? About strangers becoming family, Zarath replied. About voices that were silenced finding harmony together. About the song of hope that echoes from a small blue world to the farthest stars. The aliens' large eyes reflected the lights of departing ships. But mostly, Director, they will sing about humans who looked at the galaxies unwanted and said, "You belong here." Marcus felt a lump forming in his throat. Zarath, can I ask you something? Do you really think we can win against the consortium? The Lumari navigator was quiet for a moment. their skins cycling through several color patterns. Director, my people have a saying. The strongest harmony comes not from voices that are the same, but from voices that choose to sing together. The consortium believes in the power of conformity, but we have learnt the power of chosen unity. That's not really an answer, Doctor, Santos pointed out gently. Zaratha's throat produced the crystalline sound that was their equivalent of laughter. You are correct, but here is my answer. I have seen Kirathi crystals learn to harmonize with human music. I have watched Nixari biotechnology adapt to protect species it was never designed for. I have witnessed Etherian quantum mechanics merge with human engineering in ways that create possibilities neither species imagined alone. The consortium comes with 3,000 years of experience conquering isolated civilizations, Zarath continued. We will meet them with something that has never existed before. A truly cooperative alliance where each species' strengths enhance rather than replace the others. Will we win? I do not know. But I know we will show the galaxy something it has never seen. As the last ship of the day departed Earth's orbital station, carrying human dreams and alien hopes toward distant stars, Marcus found himself believing that maybe, just maybe, they really could pull this off. The galaxy had cast these beings out, but humanity had taken them in. Now they were all going to find out what happened when the unwanted decided to fight back together. The great game was beginning, and for the first time in millennia, the consortium was going to face an opponent they couldn't understand, couldn't predict, and couldn't conquer through force alone. They were about to discover what diversity looked like when it chose to stand united. Commander Elena Vasquez gripped the tactical console of the newly christened TACS Defiant as alarm klaxons echoed through the bridge. The ship itself was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, a human hull framework interlaced with living Kirathi crystal matrices, powered by Lamari harmonic cores, and equipped with Nexari bioadaptive systems. At 8 months old, it was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever produced, and it was about to face its first real test. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka from the sensor station. Configuration matches consortium battle cruiser specifications from the refugee databases. Estimated crew of 800. Distance? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. 12 million kilometers and closing. They'll be in weapons range in 37 minutes. Elena turned to the alien members of her bridge crew. Integration that would have been unthinkable 18 months ago. Analysis Song of Deep Waters? The Lumari tactical officer's skin had shifted to deep purple hues, indicating concentration mixed with concern. The ship's harmonic signature suggests a purification-class vessel, Captain. They are designed specifically for planetary bombardment and refugee elimination. This is not an exploration ship.
Velsha?
Elena addressed the Kirathi engineering officer, whose crystalline form pulsed with agitated light patterns. The biocrystal matrix is ready for combat operations, Velsha replied in her chiming voice. Hull reinforcement is at optimal levels, and the adaptive armor is already analyzing the enemy's approach vector for potential weapon types. Elena nodded and opened a channel to the rest of her small fleet. The Defiant was accompanied by 2 other vessels, the Lumari ship Harmony of Distant Stars and the Nixari bioship Growing Strength. Together, they represented the first truly integrated multi-species task force in galactic history. All ships, this is Defiant. Implement Formation Delta and prepare for combat. Remember, our job isn't to destroy this ship, it's to capture it intact and prove to the consortium that their intelligence about us is wrong. The plan was ambitious to the point of seeming suicidal. Instead of running or fighting defensively, they were going to attempt something that no resistance movement in the galaxy's history had ever accomplished: the capture of an active consortium warship. The intelligence value would be enormous, but more importantly, it would send a message that the Terra Refugee Coalition was not a collection of frightened refugees hiding behind a primitive species. Incoming transmission from the consortium vessel, reported Communications Officer Park. They're demanding our immediate surrender and the return of all refugee populations to consortium custody. Elena smiled grimly. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a figure that was both familiar and alien. The consortium commander appeared to be from one of their founding species. Tall, elegant, with pale blue skin and features that spoke of genetic perfection. Their uniform was spotless white, adorned with symbols that represented millennia of galactic dominance. I am Sector Commander Talinus of the Consortium Purification Fleet, the figure announced in perfect, emotionless English. You will surrender the illegal refugees under your protection and submit your species for compliance evaluation. Resistance will result in your classification as a purification target. Elena stood up from her captain's chair, very deliberately, not showing any sign of intimidation. I am Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terra Refugee Defense Coalition. Your refugees are our citizens now. And this coalition doesn't recognize consortium authority in this region of space. Thalanice's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind their eyes. You are a primitive species that has achieved limited interplanetary travel. You cannot hope to resist consortium authority. Surrender now, and your species may be offered tributary status rather than purification. Counteroffer, Elena replied. You turn around and return to consortium space with the message that this region is under coalition protection. Anyone seeking asylum here will receive it, and any attempts to retrieve them will be met with force. For the first time, Thalinus showed emotion, a slight narrowing of their eyes that might have been surprise or anger. You dare threaten a consortium vessel? Your entire civilization exists at our sufferance. Actually, Elena said, nodding to Son of Deep Waters, we've been doing some research on consortium history. Did you know that in 3,000 years of expansion, your forces have never faced coordinated resistance from multiple species working in true cooperation? Every enemy you've encountered has been either a single species or an empire where one race dominated the others. Irrelevant. Surrender now or face the consequences. Elena's smile widened. Velsha, show them our consequences. The Kirathi officer's crystalline form blazed with sudden light. Throughout the ship, biocrystal matrices that had been dormant suddenly came alive, their energy signatures blooming across the consortium sensors like flowers opening to sunlight. The Defiant's hull began to shimmer as adaptive armor shifted into configurations that the consortium databases had no record of. Simultaneously, the harmony of distant stars began broadcasting what the Lumari called a war song. Harmonic frequencies that could disrupt consortium targeting systems while enhancing the coordination of allied vessels. The growing strength simply vanished from sensors entirely, its bioadaptive hull shifting into configurations that bent electromagnetic radiation around it. Elena watched with satisfaction as Thalinus's composed expression cracked. What are you? The consortium commander demanded. We're what happens when you throw away the best parts of civilization, Elena replied. Song of Deep Waters, analysis of their targeting systems?
Completely confused, Commander.
Their weapons cannot lock onto ships using technologies they do not recognize. The Lumari war song is overwhelming their coordination algorithms. Growing strength status report? Captain Zachary's voice came through the communications system with the distinctive clicking harmonics of Nixari speech. Bioship has achieved optimal stealth configuration. Moving to flanking position. Their sensors detect nothing but space. Elena turned back to the consortium commander. Last chance, Thalanis. Withdraw now, and we'll let you leave with a message for your superiors. Continue this course, and we'll show you why the galaxy's outcasts chose to make their stand here. Thalinus's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. Fire all weapons. Target their command ship. What followed defied every assumption the consortium had about how space battles should work. The Purification-class vessel was designed to overwhelm enemies with massive energy beams and guided projectiles, relying on superior technology and overwhelming firepower to achieve quick victories. But the Coalition ships didn't fight like any enemy the Consortium had ever faced. The Defiant didn't try to avoid the Consortium weapons. Instead, the Kirathi biocrystal armor absorbed the energy and fed it back into the ship's systems, making them stronger with each hit. The Lumari harmonic cores converted the weapon impacts into resonance frequencies that disrupted the enemy ship's internal systems. The harmony of distant stars moved like a dancer, its Lumari crew singing their vessel through impossible maneuvers while broadcasting interference that turned the Consortium's own weapons against each other. And the growing strength simply appeared wherever the Consortium ship wasn't looking, its bioadaptive weapons adapting in real time to find weaknesses in enemy systems. Commander, reported Lieutenant Tanaka, the Consortium ship is losing structural integrity. Their weapons are overloading because they can't compensate for our adaptive defenses. Velsha, can we disable them without destroying the ship? The Kirathi officer's crystal form pulsed rapidly. Biocrystal tendrils are ready for deployment. We can interface directly with their ship's hull and overwhelm their computer systems. Do it. What happened next would be talked about in Coalition space for generations. The Defiant extended dozens of crystalline tendrils that moved like living things, seeking out and penetrating the Consortium ship's hull. Within minutes, the alien biocrystals had infiltrated the enemy vessel's computer systems, not destroying them, but rather convincing them that the ship was no longer in danger and should shut down all weapons. On the main screen, the Lennis stared in shock as their ship's systems reported that everything was functioning normally while simultaneously becoming completely unresponsive to commands. "How is this possible?" the consortium commander whispered. Elena smiled. "Because your computers are designed to interface only with technology they recognize. Our biocrystals are convincing them that we're part of your ship now. Song of Deep Waters, are you ready for boarding operations? All boarding teams are prepared, Commander. The Lumari will handle communications and translation, while the Nixari teams will deal with any biological hazards."
What about human teams? Ready for command and control operations, ma'am.
Elena opened a channel to the consortium ship. "Commander Thalanis, your vessel is now disabled and will be boarded. Order your crew to stand down and cooperate with our teams. Anyone who surrenders will be treated according to the Coalition Accord on Prisoners of War." "This is impossible," Thalanis said, but their voice lacked its earlier confidence. "A purification-class vessel cannot be defeated by primitive technology." "You're right," Elena admitted. "It can't be defeated by primitive technology, but it can be defeated by advanced technology that your people threw away when you decided diversity was dangerous. Every system we're using against you was developed by species you exiled or destroyed." The boarding operation took 3 hours and proceeded with minimal resistance. The consortium crew, faced with technology they couldn't understand or counter, largely chose to surrender rather than fight an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. What Elena and her teams found aboard the consortium ship was both fascinating and disturbing. The vessel was a marvel of engineering, but it was also sterile in a way that spoke of a civilization that had optimized all creativity out of its existence. Every surface was perfectly uniform, every system was standardized, and every crew member seemed to be a variation on the same basic template.
Commander, reported Chief Petty Officer Williams over the comm. We've secured their computer core.
But you need to see what's in their databases. Elena made her way to the consortium ship's command center, where her technical teams were working alongside Nixari biocomputer specialists to access the enemy's files. What they found sent chills through everyone present. "These aren't just records of the current purification campaign," explained Dr. Jib, Sarah Kim, the mission's computer specialist. "They're plans for what comes after. The consortium isn't just eliminating troublesome species, they're working towards something called the final harmony." "What's that?" Elena asked. Though she was afraid she already knew, Song of Deep Waters answered, their skin patterns shifting to deep black with silver spirals, colors indicating profound sorrow. According to these files, the consortium believes that galactic peace can only be achieved when all species have been either eliminated or genetically modified to be identical. They plan to reduce the entire galaxy to a single, uniform civilization.
How long have they been working toward this? According to the chronology here, Dr.
Kim said about 6,000 years. The current purification is just the latest phase. They've been systematically eliminating diversity for millennia. Elena felt sick. How many species? Thousands. But Commander, there's something else. According to these files, there are other resistance movements throughout the galaxy. Small ones mostly, but they exist. The consortium has been hunting them down one by one. Show me. The holographic display that materialized showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with thousands of red dots marking extinct civilizations and dozens of yellow dots marking current resistance movements. Most of the yellow dots were small and isolated, but Elena could see that they formed a rough pattern. Scattered groups that had no knowledge of each other, but were all fighting the same enemy.
My God, she whispered.
We're not alone. No, Commander, Song of Deep Waters said, their voice filled with something that might have been hope. But according to these files, we are the largest and most successful resistance movement in current consortium records. They classify us as a Category 5 threat, unprecedented in their experience. What does that mean for us? It means, came a new voice from the entrance to the command center, that you have just changed the course of galactic history. Elena turned to see Commander Thalanis, now in restraints but walking under their own power. The consortium officer's perfect features showed signs of exhaustion and confusion. You want to explain that? Elena asked. I have commanded purification operations for 2 centuries, Thalanis said quietly. I've eliminated 43 resistance movements, conquered 28 worlds, and overseen the compliance processing of 17 species. But I have never seen anything like what your coalition has accomplished. which is true cooperation between fundamentally different species. In all my experience, multi-species alliances have always been based on dominance hierarchies. One species leads, others follow. But your coalition shows genuine equality and mutual enhancement. It should be impossible. Elena studied the alien commander. Why should it be impossible? Because the consortium has spent millennia proving that it is impossible. Our entire civilization is based on the principle that different species cannot truly cooperate without conflict. Our success in conquering the galaxy is proof of that principle. Or, Elena said quietly, your success in conquering the galaxy is proof that you've been eliminating everyone who could prove you wrong. Tyrolean was silent for a long moment. When they spoke again, their voice was different, less certain, more thoughtful. Commander Vasquez, what you have accomplished here today will force the consortium to reassess everything they believe about galactic civilization. That makes your coalition the greatest threat they have ever faced. Good, Elena replied. Maybe it's time they learned to be afraid. But as she looked at the galactic map, with its thousands of red dots marking extinct civilizations, Elena realized that the real fight was just beginning. The coalition had proven they could stand against the consortium, but they had also just painted an enormous target on themselves. The galaxy's most powerful empire now knew that their fundamental beliefs about diversity and cooperation were being challenged by a group of species they had dismissed as irrelevant. The message they would send back to Earth would be both triumphant and sobering. The coalition could win battles against the consortium, but they were about to face a war unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. And somewhere out there, other resistance movements were fighting the same fight, alone and unaware that they finally had allies. Elena looked out at the stars and made a silent promise. The galaxy had cast out its most precious treasures, its diversity, its creativity, its refusal to conform. But those treasures had found a home with humanity, and together they were going to remind the universe what civilization could look like when it celebrated differences instead of eliminating them. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Sarah Harrison stood in the war room of Terra Station, studying the holographic display that showed the current tactical situation across Coalition space. 2 years had passed since Commander Vasquez's capture of the consortium vessel, and the galaxy had become a very different place. What had started as a refugee crisis had evolved into the largest resistance movement in recorded galactic history. Status report, she requested. Addressing the assembled commanders, representing 23 different species, General Marcus Torres, now commanding Coalition ground forces, spoke first. 17 colony worlds are fully operational and defending themselves successfully. The Kyrathi bioship yards at Kepler 442b have produced 47 vessels, each one unique and adapted for specific tactical roles. The Nexari research stations have developed 12 new biotechnology applications that the consortium has no defense against. What about recruitment? Harrison asked. Prime Thinker Zekth stepped forward, their insectoid form clicking with excitement. Admiral, we are no longer just accepting refugees. We are liberating them. Our intelligence networks have identified 300 resistance cells throughout the galaxy. In the past 6 months, we have successfully evacuated 47 groups that were under imminent threat of purification. And the consortium response, Wind Through Stars, now serving as Coalition Intelligence Coordinator, shimmered with concern. They have escalated from purification operations to something they call the Final Solution Protocol. Entire star systems are being sterilized if they show any signs of harboring resistance activities. The death toll is... The Etherian paused, clearly struggling with the numbers. Conservative estimates suggest that 6 billion sentient beings have been eliminated in the past 18 months. A heavy silence fell over the room. The weight of those numbers was almost incomprehensible, but everyone present understood the implications. The consortium wasn't just trying to maintain order anymore. They were actively working toward the complete extinction of galactic diversity. There's more, Wind Through Stars continued. Our captured intelligence indicates that the consortium has identified Earth as the primary coordination center for galactic resistance. They are mobilizing something called a core fleet for what they term a decisive sterilization event. How long do we have? Harrison asked, though she dreaded the answer. Based on their fleet movements and logistical preparations, approximately 8 months, replied Captain Zarathate, who had been promoted to Coalition Naval Intelligence. But, Admiral, the scale of this fleet is unprecedented. 12,000 ships, including Fortress-class vessels capable of destroying entire planets. They are not coming to capture or pacify. They are coming to eliminate every trace of our coalition and turn Earth into an example for the rest of the galaxy. Harrison absorbed this information while studying the tactical display. The coalition had grown enormously in the past 2 years, but they were still vastly outnumbered by consortium forces. However, they had advantages that the enemy couldn't quantify or counter. Recommendations? She asked. Commander Elena Vasquez, recently promoted to head of Coalition Special Operations, stepped forward. Admiral, we can't win a conventional war against those numbers, but we don't need to. We need to change the nature of the conflict entirely. Explain. The consortium's greatest strength is their uniformity. Every ship, every tactic, every response is standardized across their entire fleet. But that's also their greatest weakness. They cannot adapt quickly to unexpected situations because their entire command structure is built around predetermined responses. Elena activated a new holographic display showing intelligence gathered from captured consortium ships. We've identified the command hierarchy for the incoming fleet. It's organized around 12 core commanders, each controlling 1,000-ship formation. If we can capture or turn even one of those commanders, we can create chaos in their entire command structure. Turn? Harrison asked. You mean convince a consortium commander to defect? We mean show them the truth, interjected a new voice from the entrance to the war room. Everyone turned to see former consortium commander Talanis entering, no longer in restraints but wearing a modified coalition uniform. The aliens' presence still made some coalition members uncomfortable, but their intelligence had proved invaluable. Commander Thalanis, Harrison acknowledged. You have something to add? Admiral? During my 18 months as a coalition prisoner, I have observed something that contradicts everything the consortium believes about civilization. Your species and your allies have created genuine harmony without eliminating diversity. It should be impossible, yet it exists. Thalanis moved to the tactical display, highlighting several captured consortium vessels. There are others among the consortium leadership who have begun to question the final harmony doctrine, but they lack evidence that alternative forms of civilization can work. Seeing the coalition in action would shatter their fundamental beliefs. You're suggesting a psychological warfare campaign? General Torres asked. I am suggesting we give them a choice, Thalanis replied. Show them that cooperation does not require conquest, that diversity enhances rather than threatens stability. Some will reject this evidence, but others. The alien's expression grew thoughtful. Others may remember what their species were like before the consortium standardized them into conformity. Harrison considered this carefully. What would such an operation look like? Elena pulled up another set of tactical projections. We don't fight their main fleet directly. Instead, we systematically capture their support vessels, logistic ships, and reconnaissance units. Each captured crew gets exposure to coalition society, not as prisoners, but as guests. We let them see how we actually function. And then? We release them, Zaroff said, understanding the plan immediately. They return to their fleets with first-hand knowledge that everything they believe about multi-species cooperation is wrong. Some will dismiss what they've seen, but others will begin to question. And in a civilization built on absolute certainty, questions are extremely dangerous. Admiral Harrison studied the faces around her, human and alien, military and civilian, all united by their refusal to accept that diversity was dangerous. It's a massive risk. If this psychological campaign fails, we'll have given the enemy detailed intelligence about our capabilities. With respect, Admiral, said Clan Mother Veltar, her crystalline form pulsing with determined light, they already have 12,000 ships coming to destroy us. The risk of conventional defeat is absolute. The risk of trying something unprecedented is merely enormous. Harrison smiled despite the gravity of the situation. When you put it that way, very well. We implement Operation Mirror, named because we're going to show the consortium a reflection of what they could have been. The next 6 months saw the most unusual military campaign in galactic history. Instead of massing their forces for a decisive battle, coalition fleets scattered throughout the region, targeting consortium support vessels with a combination of advanced tactics and captured enemy technology. But the real weapons were the refugee communities themselves. Captured consortium crews found themselves on worlds where former enemies lived side by side, where different species shared technology and culture freely, where conflict was resolved through negotiation rather than domination. They saw Kirathi children playing games invented by human kids, watched Nixari biotechnology healing Lumari injuries, witnessed Etherian quantum mechanics being used to solve problems identified by human scientists. Most importantly, they met former consortium species who had rediscovered their original cultures after joining the coalition. The Veltai, who had been forced to abandon their artistic traditions 3 centuries earlier, now created sculptures that incorporated both their ancient techniques and new materials provided by human industry. The Mordun, whose emotional expression had been classified as disruptive and suppressed, now served as coalition diplomats, using their empathic abilities to facilitate understanding between radically different species.
The psychological impact on captured consortium personnel was profound.
Many requested asylum rather than return to their fleets. Others accepted repatriation but carried with them questions that spread through the consortium ranks like a virus. Commander Thalanis proved instrumental in this process, serving as a living example that consortium indoctrination could be overcome. Their first-hand accounts of coalition society, delivered to former colleagues during prisoner exchanges, created cracks in the certainty that held the consortium together. But perhaps the most effective tool was something completely unexpected: music. The idea came from the Lumari, who had begun composing what they called harmony songs that incorporated elements from every coalition species. These compositions were broadcast on frequencies that could be received by any ship in the region, and their mathematical beauty was undeniable, even to races that had no equivalent to music in their cultures. "The equations are perfect," reported a captured consortium mathematician after hearing a performance by the coalition mixed choir. "The harmonic progressions demonstrate optimization principles that our computers cannot reproduce." How is this possible? Because, Zarath had explained, true harmony cannot be calculated, it must be felt and chosen by every participant. Your computers can analyze our music, but they cannot create it because creation requires the very diversity your civilization seeks to eliminate. As the consortium core fleet approached coalition space, their communications intercepts revealed growing confusion and dissent among their ranks. Ship crews were asking questions that their commanders couldn't answer. Some vessels had reported technical malfunctions that forced them to drop out of formation. Malfunctions that later proved to be crews deliberately sabotaging their own ships, rather than participate in planetary sterilization. 3 weeks before the anticipated arrival of the main fleet, coalition sensors detected something unprecedented. A group of 64 consortium vessels had broken away from the main formation and were broadcasting surrender signals. Admiral Harrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Tax Unity as the defecting ships approached coalition space. The lead vessel requested permission to communicate directly with coalition command. "This is Sub-Commander Eurelkas, of the consortium vessel Eternal Order," came the transmission. "We request asylum for our crews and civilian populations. We can no longer participate in the elimination of galactic diversity." "Permission granted," Harrison replied. "Welcome to Coalition Space, Sub-Commander. We'll guide you to New Haven Colony for processing and integration." "Admiral." Eurelkas's voice carried obvious emotion despite the translation matrix. "There are others, many others who question the final harmony doctrine but fear to act. If you can demonstrate that the Coalition can survive the core fleet assault, you think more will defect?" "I believe, Admiral, that the Consortium's greatest fear is about to be realized. They have spent millennia claiming that diversity leads to chaos and conflict. But if a diverse coalition can defeat a uniform empire, it will prove that their entire civilization is built on a lie. And lies, no matter how old, cannot survive contact with demonstrated truth." Admiral Harrison looked out at the approaching defector ships, each one representing dozens of species that had been forced into consortium conformity, but had never forgotten what they had lost. Behind them, still weeks away but approaching steadily, came 12,000 ships carrying the concentrated might of the galaxy's oldest civilization. But for the first time since this conflict began, Harrison felt genuinely optimistic about their chances. The consortium was coming to destroy a refugee coalition, but they were about to face something they had never encountered before: an enemy that could turn their own people against them simply by demonstrating that there was a better way to live. The final battle for the soul of galactic civilization was about to begin, and it would be fought not just with ships and weapons, but with ideas, hope, and the radical proposition that differences were strengths rather than threats. As the first defector ships docked at coalition stations and their crews took their first steps toward freedom, Harrison realized that Operation Mirror had already succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The consortium was still coming with overwhelming force, but they were no longer unified in purpose. And in a conflict between diverse cooperation and enforced conformity, unity of purpose would prove to be the decisive factor. The Battle of Sol began not with weapons fire, but with music. As the consortium core fleet decelerated from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, they were greeted by something unprecedented in the history of galactic warfare: a coordinated broadcast from every coalition vessel, station, and colony world. thousands of voices from dozens of species, singing in perfect harmony a composition that had never existed before this moment. Admiral Sarah Harrison stood on the bridge of the Tax Unity, watching as the consortium fleet arranged itself into the traditional pattern of overwhelming force. Massive fortress ships at the center, battle cruisers forming attack wings, countless smaller vessels creating an impenetrable screen. 12,000 ships, representing 3 millennia of galactic dominance, facing the 400 coalition vessels that had managed to gather for this final confrontation. Consortium transmission incoming, reported Communications Officer Chen. Admiral, they're demanding immediate surrender and the return of all defector vessels. Put them through, Harrison ordered. The main screen filled with the image of Supreme Commander Velthahan, one of the oldest and most decorated officers in Consortium history. The aliens' pale blue features showed no emotion, but their eyes held the cold certainty of absolute authority. I am Supreme Commander Velthahan of the Consortium Core Fleet, the figure announced. You will immediately cease your illegal broadcasts, surrender all stolen Consortium property, and submit your coalition for compliance processing. You have 1 standard hour to comply before we begin planetary sterilization operations. Harrison stepped forward, very deliberately, not showing any sign of intimidation. Around her, the bridge crew, human, Lumari, Kirathi, Nexari, and a dozen other species,
worked together with the seamless coordination that had become the Coalition's greatest strength.
I am Admiral Sarah Harrison of the Terra Refugee Defense Coalition, she replied calmly. We reject your authority, refuse your demands, and formally invite any Consortium personnel who wish to defect to seek asylum with our forces. Your choice, Supreme Commander, is not whether to fight us, but whether to fight alongside us against the real threat to galactic civilization. Velthahan's composure cracked slightly. The real threat, child, we are the guardians of galactic order. We have maintained peace and stability for 3,000 years. You've maintained silence, Harrison corrected. You've eliminated every voice that dared to sing a different song. But, Supreme Commander, we've seen your intelligence files. We know about the other threats you've been hiding from, the extragalactic entities your scouts have detected, the quantum anomalies that are destabilizing space-time itself, the evolutionary dead end your civilization has created by eliminating all adaptive capability. For the first time in the conversation, Velthahan showed genuine surprise. How do you... That information is classified at the highest levels. Because your defectors brought it to us, Harrison said simply. Including some very high-ranking officers who realized that the Consortium's path leads to extinction, not salvation. Supreme Commander, you're not here to maintain order. You're here to destroy the galaxy's only hope of surviving what's coming. The transmission cut abruptly, but Harrison could see the effect her words had on the enemy fleet. Several ships broke formation momentarily before returning to position, and Coalition sensors detected increased internal communications traffic across the Consortium vessels. Admiral, reported Captain Zaras from the sensor station, I'm reading fluctuations in the Consortium fleet's coordination network. Some ships are requesting clarification of mission parameters. And our defector assets? Commander Elena Vasquez answered from her station. 736 Coalition agents are now embedded throughout the Consortium fleet, all former prisoners who accepted repatriation after their exposure to our society. They're beginning activation of the psychological warfare protocols. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. The Consortium opened with their traditional overwhelming assault, massive energy beams and guided projectiles designed to shatter enemy formations before they could coordinate a response. But the Coalition fleet didn't disperse or attempt to match their firepower. Instead, they did something the Consortium couldn't understand or counter. They adapted. Every Coalition ship was unique, incorporating technologies and design philosophies from different species. When the Consortium weapons hit Kirathi biocrystal armor, the crystals absorbed the energy and used it to heal damage on nearby vessels. When Lumari harmonic cores were struck, they converted the impacts into resonance frequencies that disrupted Consortium targeting systems across multiple ships. The Nexari biovessels simply evolved, their living hulls adapting in real time to counter whatever weapons were used against them. And the human ships, with their chaotic mix of technologies from a dozen different species, proved impossible for Consortium computers to categorize or predict. But the real battle was being fought in the minds and hearts of the Consortium crews themselves. Broadcast the recordings, Harrison ordered. Across every communication frequency, the Coalition began transmitting testimonials from former Consortium personnel who had chosen to defect. These weren't propaganda pieces. They were honest, personal accounts of individuals who had rediscovered what their species had been like before the consortium forced them into conformity. Commander Talanus' voice came through the static of weapons fire. I served the consortium for 2 centuries, believing that diversity was chaos and that order required uniformity. But I have seen species working together not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. I have witnessed the children of former enemies playing together, creating new games that neither species could have imagined alone. Other voices joined the broadcast, hundreds of defectors sharing their experiences, their doubts, their discoveries about what galactic civilization could become if it embraced rather than feared differences. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Across the consortium fleet, crews began questioning orders, demanding explanations for why they were attempting to destroy something that their own people claimed was beautiful and functional. Supreme Commander.
Came a transmission from one of the consortium battle cruisers. This is Captain Zornath of the Eternal Vigilance.
My crew is requesting clarification of mission objectives. The intelligence we received indicated we were facing a chaotic refugee rabble, but our sensors show highly coordinated and technologically advanced opposition. Execute your orders, Captain. Velthan replied curtly. Sir, approximately 40% of my crew consists of species that the Coalition claims to be protecting. They are asking why we are attempting to destroy beings who share our genetic heritage. Because those beings have chosen chaos over order, Velthan snapped. Execute your orders or face court-martial. But the damage was already spreading. Ship after ship began reporting technical malfunctions that prevented them from firing on Coalition targets. Some vessels simply stopped maneuvering, claiming navigational failures. Others requested permission to withdraw for systems checks that everyone knew were actually crew consultations about whether to continue fighting. The turning point came when the consortium's own propaganda backfired spectacularly. In an attempt to motivate their crews, Supreme Command broadcast captured Coalition communications that were supposed to demonstrate the chaos and inefficiency of multi-species cooperation. Instead, consortium crews heard Coalition vessels coordinating complex tactical maneuvers while simultaneously discussing cultural exchange programs, joint research projects, and collaborative art installations. They heard commanders from different species deferring to whoever had the best expertise for a given situation, regardless of rank or origin. They heard the sound of genuine cooperation between radically different civilizations. Admiral, reported Wind Through Stars from the intelligence station, massive defection event in progress. 217 consortium vessels have declared neutrality and are requesting asylum. Another 400 are reporting crew revolts and requesting Coalition assistance to restore order. Harrison could barely believe what she was seeing. The mighty consortium core fleet, which should have been overwhelming the Coalition with sheer numbers, was disintegrating from within as its crews discovered that everything they had been taught about diversity and cooperation was wrong. But not all of the consortium forces were defecting. Supreme Commander Velthan rallied the loyalist vessels, approximately 4,000 ships crewed by species that were too thoroughly indoctrinated to question their orders, or who genuinely believed that diversity was dangerous. All remaining vessels. Velthan broadcast. We face a contamination that threatens the very foundations of galactic civilization. These rebels have corrupted our people with their chaotic ideology. We must cleanse this system completely to prevent further spread of their poison. The remaining consortium forces reorganized into a compact formation and launched what military historians would later call the most ferocious assault in recorded warfare. They weren't just trying to destroy the Coalition fleet. They were trying to sterilize the entire Sol system to prevent any trace of Coalition ideology from surviving. But now the odds were much more even. And the Coalition had advantages that pure technology couldn't counter. All vessels, Harrison broadcast to her fleet, implement Harmony Protocol. What followed demonstrated why the Coalition had become the most feared enemy in consortium history. Instead of fighting as individual ships, the Coalition fleet began operating as a single, coordinated organism. Lumari harmonic networks allowed instant communication between vessels. Kirathi biocrystals shared shield strength across multiple ships. Nexari biocomputers coordinated targeting solutions that took advantage of every species' unique capabilities. Human innovation tied it all together, creating tactical solutions that no single species could have developed alone. Ships began operating in formations that seemed impossible. Vessels sharing power, weapons, even crew members through biocrystal transportation networks that could beam personnel between ships in seconds. The battle raged for 18 hours, but the outcome became clear much earlier. The consortium forces, for all their technological superiority, couldn't adapt to enemies who thought and fought in ways their databases had never recorded. Every tactic they tried was countered by some combination of species working together in ways that seemed to violate everything the consortium knew about military science. Supreme Commander Velfan's flagship was the last Loyalist vessel still fighting when Harrison opened a final communication channel. "This ends now, Velfan," she said quietly. "Your fleet is defeated. Your crews have chosen freedom over conformity, and your ideology has been proven wrong by demonstrated reality. Surrender, and we'll show you what the galaxy can become when it stops fearing its own diversity." The consortium commander's image appeared on the screen one final time, their perfect features now showing exhaustion and confusion. "How?" they whispered. "How did you defeat 3,000 years of proven superiority?" "By proving it wasn't superior," Harrison replied gently. "By showing the galaxy that cooperation is stronger than conquest, that diversity creates possibilities rather than problems, and that the greatest strength comes not from eliminating differences, but from celebrating them." Velfan was silent for a long moment, then slowly removed their command insignia. I surrender." "But Admiral, you must understand, the consortium was not created from cruelty. We genuinely believed that uniformity was the only path to peace." "I know," Harrison said, "and now you have a chance to help us build something better. The galaxy needs healing, Veltan. It needs species who remember what they were before the consortium standardized them. It needs the wisdom that comes from 3,000 years of experience, combined with the hope that comes from rediscovering what civilization can be." As the Battle of Sol officially ended with the surrender of the last consortium forces, Admiral Harrison looked out at a solar system filled with ships from dozens of species. Former enemies now working together to establish something unprecedented in galactic history. The communications channels filled with transmissions from across the galaxy as news of the coalition victory spread. Resistance movements that had been isolated for centuries suddenly found they had allies. Species that had hidden for millennia began emerging from concealment. And throughout consortium space, ship crews were demanding explanations for why they had been told the coalition was evil, when all evidence suggested the opposite. But perhaps the most significant transmission came from the galactic core, where the oldest and most powerful consortium worlds were located. It was a simple message from the Council of Founding Species. "We request immediate diplomatic contact with the Terra Refugee Defense Coalition. We wish to discuss terms for the peaceful dissolution of the consortium and the establishment of a new galactic order based on voluntary cooperation rather than enforced conformity." 6 months later, Admiral Sarah Harrison stood in the same observation lounge where Dr. Marcus Webb had first watched refugee ships arriving at Earth's orbital stations. But now, instead of desperate fleeing vessels, she was watching the greatest peaceful migration in galactic history. Ships from thousands of species filled the space around Earth, not as refugees seeking sanctuary, but as partners in building a new kind of civilization. The coalition had grown from a desperate alliance of outcasts to become the foundation of what historians were already calling the Second Galactic Age, an era defined not by conquest and conformity, but by cooperation and celebration of diversity. Zareth joined her at the observation window, their skin displaying the warm golden hues that indicated deep contentment. "Admiral, the Lumari Council of Voices has completed their latest composition. They call it the Song of Second Chances, dedicated to the species who offered strangers a home when they had nowhere else to go." Harrison smiled, watching as a beautiful crystalline vessel, clearly Karathi construction but incorporating design elements from a dozen other species, docked with the station. "Tell me, Zareth, do you ever regret that the galaxy cast your people out?" The Lumari navigator was quiet for a moment, their skin cycling through thoughtful blue and silver patterns. "Admiral, my people have a saying, sometimes we must lose our first home to find our true one. The galaxy cast us out, but humans took us in. In trying to eliminate us, the consortium accidentally created the very diversity that would replace them. And now we sing new songs with new voices, and the galaxy learns harmony it never knew was possible." Zareth turned to look at Harrison. "But Admiral, the most beautiful note in our new galactic symphony is the voice of a young species that looked at the universe as unwanted and said, 'You belong here.' That note will echo through the cosmos long after we are all gone." As Harrison watched ships from across the galaxy arriving to join the coalition, she reflected on how much had changed. 18 months ago, humanity had been a single-world species just beginning to explore their own solar system. Now they were the heart of a galactic civilization that spanned millions of worlds and embraced billions of different ways of life. The galaxy had cast out its treasures, considering them dangerous and disruptive to the order it was trying to maintain. But those treasures had found their way to Earth, where they discovered that diversity wasn't chaos, it was symphony, and every voice made the music more beautiful. And in the end, that music had proven stronger than any empire, more enduring than any conquest. And